Are sewing pins or sewing clips better for you if you're an absolute beginner when it comes to sewing? That's the question that we're going to answer in this video. Hi, my name's Abby, and I'm on a mission to help you start sewing your own clothes from home quickly while having fun. So if that's something you're interested in, be sure to hit the subscribe button below. Then let's start seeing what these clips and these sewing pins are actually used for. So typically when you're sewing, you're going to take two pieces of fabric, lay them on top of each other, right side spacing, and then sew along the edge. The problem is that your fabric can move and not stay in position when you're bringing it to your sewing machine or when you're actually sewing it. We don't want that. So that's why we use pins and clips to hold our fabric in place. Now let's take a closer look at these clips. So we have a flat plastic piece on the bottom, a curved, colorful plastic piece on top, and then a silver spring that holds them together. And these work just like any other clip. All you're going to do is pinch the back and you'll see that the front opens. And we can use this to open it and clip it right onto our fabric. Yep, it's that easy. Sewing pins, on the other hand, are a sharp little piece of metal with a plastic or large head on one end. Now, these are just a little bit trickier to use, but what you need to do is take the pointy end and poke it through your layers of fabric, and then fold the fabric up just a little bit to create a bump, and then push the pointy side through back to the top. Okay, it takes a little bit of practice, but don't worry, it's really not that hard. And what's fun about pins is you can actually pin them in several different directions. So you can pin them parallel like this, or you can pin them perpendicular, pointing into the fabric or pointing towards you. Have you ever used sewing pins or sewing clips? If you have, let me know in the comments below and let me know which one you prefer. If you haven't touched either one of these, then let's keep going and look at the pros and cons for each one. We already saw how easy the clips were to use, so those are definitely going to win this round. Now we're going to look at how flat the fabric lays when we use each one of these. Having the fabric lay flat will make work easier for you as a beginner. So here, if we look at pins, you can see that the fabric is really wavy. And even if we turn the pins perpendicular to the fabric, we have the same issue. So pins do tend to warp the fabric. However, clips make sure that the fabric is nice and flat and smooth all the time. So again, this round is going to go to the clips. Another bonus feature on the clips is that you can actually use them to measure. They have these little lines on the bottom side, and they're typically telling you where the 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch, and 1/8 inch marks are. So you can line these up right on your fabric and know where you're going to be sewing. With pens, it's just going to be a guessing game. So another round goes to the clips. When it comes to size and weight, though, clips are definitely bigger. This is 5 clips compared to 5 pens, and they're already much more massive. And you typically work with 100 to 200 of these. So it can add up quite quickly. So sewing pins have a cute little pin cushion you can put them into. They're easy to pull out and grab, and you can even put it on your wrist and walk around with it so that way you don't lose it. Clips, on the other hand, have a cute little box that you can get, but they are quite a bit bigger. They take up more space on your sewing table, and I haven't found a great way to just walk around with them and have them accessible when I'm fitting or doing other things. So as far as size, weight, portability, pins are definitely better. So finally, one round goes to the pins. When it comes to sewing lots of layers of fabric, so if you're wanting to sew bags or historical costumes or things like that, you're going to have a lot of layers. So how do the pins compare to the clips when you have multiple layers of fabric? Clips, as you can see here, they can open really wide. The clip has a lot of room, and that fabric still stays looking pretty flat across the board. So awesome. Now, if we look at pens, that same wave issue that we had before has now become a tsunami. Like the fabric just gets so wavy. So if you're working with lots of layers, definitely invest in clips. They are going to make your projects much easier to sew. So another round goes to the clips. Remember how the whole point of sewing pens and clips is to keep your fabric in position? Pens are the absolute best at this because you can sew right up to that pen, then take the pen out and keep sewing. That means your fabric is going to stay right where you want it. Now, reminder, do not sew over your pens. They can break your needle. It can be dangerous. Remove them, then keep sewing. But clips, on the other hand, cannot fit under the presser foot. You can see I'm struggling here. So you're going to have to move the clip back far enough that you can start your project and hopefully the pieces don't move too much. And when you're sewing, you always have to remove the clip at least like that 1/2 inch before the needle. So if your fabric is shifting a lot and you can't keep it in position, pens are going to work better for you. So this round goes to the pens. Now that we've covered the really big, obvious advantages and disadvantages, are you having a preference? Are you wanting to use one more than the other? If so, let me know in the comments. But I need to tell you something that's super duper important. When it comes to sewing pens and sewing clips, there is no right or wrong answer first. So it's really whatever your preference is. If you prefer clips, use those. If you prefer pens, use those, okay? There's no right or wrong. But there are some scenarios when you can only use sewing pens. And that tends to be for more advanced projects. So my recommendation, if you're brand new to sewing, get clips. They're, in my opinion, the easiest, best beginner option. But when you start getting a little more advanced, you might find that you actually need pens for some things. So let me show you really quick what I mean about places where you can use pens, but you can't use clips. On some of the more advanced patterns that I've worked with, I've been asked to iron things before I sew them. And in that way, pens work great because they're made of metal. I can iron right over them, no problem. Clips, on the other hand, would melt because they're made of plastic. So that definitely wouldn't work. Pattern markings and transferring them to your fabric is another good example. So if I have this dart and I want to mark the tip of it on my fabric, a clip isn't going to help me. But a pen, I can actually poke through the pattern and use it as a way to mark exactly where I want to mark it on my fabric. Also, once I have that point and I draw the legs of my dart, these 2 lines, I need to line those lines up. It's a lot of the word line, but using a clip doesn't help me. But you can see here, if I use a pen and poking it through those lines that I drew, I can go through and check and make sure that everything is lined up perfectly. So again, clips just won't cut it for this particular task. And finally, if you're going to sew elastic directly to fabric, you're going to need to pull the elastic and stretch it as you're sewing. Clips just don't have the power to hold the elastic while you're stretching it. So it just pulls out like this. Whereas a pen can actually hold the elastic where you need it while you're sewing. So have you made up your mind? Are you going to get sewing clips or sewing pens? Again, there's no right or wrong answer here, but if you're ready to buy, you can check either the link in the description where I link to some of my favorite clips and pens, or you can check out my blog post, which also has even more pros and cons about each one, also linked in the description below. But really, you can typically get pens anywhere that you buy your fabric. Clips, you'll probably have to buy online. I don't really see them in stores, or if I do, they're really expensive. You can get a much better deal if you buy them online and get them in bulk of like 100 to 200 clips at a time. So now that you've made your decision about sewing clips or sewing pens, it's time to get sewing. So if you're really brand new to sewing and you're not sure what other tools you might need, or you're still feeling a little bit nervous about your sewing machine, then be sure to grab my 5 steps to sewing confidence. It's linked below. It's absolutely free, and it's my mini course showing you how to start using your sewing machine like a pro in just 5 simple steps. I believe in you. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below. But if you're ready to get sewing, check out one of these really fun beginner-friendly projects. Dig in and happy sewing.